At VBP Orange, we work hard to represent the equity of a brand in an engaging experience. The way we do this is based on lots and lots of research. It's also based on inspired, creative execution. The next speaker has brought together creative inspiration and self-tracking data to construct hand-built works and installations that imagine a time when sensors not only measure but also predict our behavior. Laurie Frick uses her background in engineering and high technology to explore the future of the quantified self, in which smartphones and gadgets gather and present patterns of stress, mood, and biofunction. Frick has recently been awarded residencies by the Neuroscience Research Center, the University of Texas, Headlands, Yaddo, and the Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts. Please join me in welcoming Laurie Frick.
Have you ever thought about what's known about you? What's really known about you? Not just when you Google yourself or you think about what you've posted on Instagram, but every time you drive through the Easy Pass lane, every movie you've seen on Netflix, every book you've read. I mean, you really start, I started making a list a while back, and and every couple days, it was large, and every couple days I'd think about something else, and I thought, all right, Amazon knows how fast I read because of my Kindle, and Fitbit has can identify me completely by my gait, by how I walk, and I make work from self-tracking data, but I thought about it and I realized a lot of this data is actually more complex and compelling and interesting than I could even remember. And so while, I describe this, there's, even today, this has gone on all day long, you sort of get slightly, vaguely uncomfortable. But my job here in the next 10 minutes is to talk you into wanting more. All right, so it all started 4 years ago. And I had this sense that something had changed with time. Linda Stone, the writer, describes it as continuous partial attention. And I wanted to really take a look at it. And, anything you really want to study, you should measure it. And I had been making artwork that was based on imagined time. And I thought, well, I should really measure my time. Every day, minute by minute, and I started doing it, and it is so hard. So I Googled it, how can I, and I actually found Ben Lipkowitz, who has been measuring his time 24 hours a day, minute by minute. Every one of those horizontal bars is a day, and he's been doing it for 5 years, and he put it all online. And it was like, holy crap, this looks like my work. This looks like what I'd always imagined time looked like. So I didn't even hesitate. I just scraped all of his data, pulled it down, and I started making work from it. And I started, rather than imagined time, I started working with real time. And I chopped and cut. But at the same time, I was working with his data, and I wanted to measure something about me. And I knew from my background in technology that sensors were going to get small. And, it's going to be in the clothes we wear. Wearables, therables, which is the new idea for Internet of Things. Therables, I love that. Ingestibles. And I thought, well, I'll just live a little bit in the future. And I'll try to measure things that are, really, really easy. And I found, my very next purchase was a Zeo. And you're right, you strap it on your head, it's got a dry EEG sensor, and it measures your sleep very, very accurately. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have to do anything. I just strap this thing on. And I started measuring my sleep. Each one of those vertical bars is a night of sleep. And I realized, time while you slept and waking, sleeping, it really wasn't so different. I'd always thought sleep was in these big, big chunks, and you realize you sleep in these little 5 and 10 minute bursts, and it was really a moment because I got a chance to see something that I never really had understood. You go to bed, you wake up, 8 hours later. What happened? And it was really interesting because I always thought I was a really good sleeper. And it turns out I'm hanging on by my fingernails. I'm barely getting enough sleep. I have, real difficulty getting enough deep sleep. And it was this moment where I could really see something about myself that I'd never really understood. And I studied sleep like crazy and realized everything good happens when you sleep. If any people here are really excited about, hey, I only need 4 hours a night, don't do it. You want to sleep more. So I started making works, based on sleep, and I came up with this rules system. So in this case, all the red is deep sleep, and the pink is REM sleep, and the things that are folded up is really light sleep, which is trash sleep. And I put all of this work in a show in Los Angeles, and it was really a pivotal moment. It got a couple of really huge reviews. It got blogged about. I got Science Magazine, and the head of research at Zio, right? I'm using the Zio to measure all the sleep. He writes me and goes, "Laurie, what can we do to help you?" And I said, "Send me more data." And he sent me data of anonymously of a bunch of people on the team, and it was the first chance I got to look at my sleep compared to a bunch of others, and I realized, right, instead of vertical, it's now horizontal. These patterns of sleep, they're like a fingerprint. It was really identifiable, very unique. You realize that these measurements, these patterns of view are very specific. In this case, all the purple is the really good stuff. That's the deep sleep. And you look at this poor guy on the bottom right, all that orange is when he's waking up all the time. And right at that point, I met Steve Dean, who runs the Quantified Self for New York. And he said, "Laurie, come bring all your sleep stuff and come talk." And as an artist, some of my friends think I'm a little too organized. Everything's got its place. All the mugs are turned the same way. All the handles in the cabinet. All my tools go right. And I got to the Quantified Self, and oh my God, these are my people. And I even met Ben Lipkowitz. And everything I learned about self-tracking came from the Quantified Self. And actually today, my husband and I run the group in Austin. And I started to figure out how to measure more. And I added to my regimen every day. And anything that was really easy, anything that was, that sort of ambiently, automatically tracked me, right? A Withing scale. I used a Fitbit for years. I've gathered over 900 nights of sleep. I had a Basis watch. I wore that for a year. It's really hideous. I finally took it off. I just kept tracking everything, and I thought, well, I'm going to really pay attention to myself and use me as a research subject. And there is a history of artists that really pay attention to themselves, that they start to anticipate a breakthrough in science. And it is like a secret fantasy of mine that some of these ideas are very, very real, that I'm not just making this up. But I really started to really notice about myself what was happening as a result of all this tracking and all this measurement, and I've done it for almost 4 years now. And one of the very first things I noticed and really had this sense was this sense of reassurance. The Zio would ask me every morning, how'd you sleep? And it was really like a mechanical mom. Honey, how'd you sleep? And, it asked you, and the recognition that I got from my Fitbit when I went over 10,000 steps, or the rhythm of stepping on the scale every day and sort of getting a sense of what has consequences. A chocolate bar matters. And I realized I was getting this sense of acknowledgement, even though it was from an inanimate device, and I could feel it. And I started to study patterns in the data. It's almost like a neural Fibonacci, right? Your patterns and your mind start to have something recognizable. And at this point, I really start to let go of a lot of the cause and effect. You know, humans are really noisy data objects, and I became fascinated by the patterns, that they started to feel like data portraits. They were specific, they were unique, they were very connected to the person. And I felt like they started to reflect something in us as a person. Okay, you see this? You get it, right? Dink, dink. And I make them. This is as I make physical work, but I started to imagine that it's really not that far in the future that you could see this as intelligent wallpaper, 3D printed, laser cut, whether it's on your phone or in the walls and the spaces that you live. We tend to repeat patterns. We tend to go the same places. It's almost like muscle memory. The places that you travel as you go to work and come home, and you go to the grocery store, and for me, where I go to Home Depot, and there's a sense of familiarity. And there's something about them that you can understand, and you don't actually understand why it feels familiar. So at this point, my studio was filled for months with all these cut and drawn patterns, and I really liked it. It felt like me. It felt familiar. It was like recognition. It felt like reassurance. And it seemed comforting. And I thought, well, what if this is a way to see yourself, right? You measure yourself, you turn it into patterns, you spend time looking at it. What if it's this shortcut to mindfulness? It's a quick and dirty way to boost your immune system. And along the way, as I'm making these, people are buying these and taking them home. They're putting in their living rooms, they're putting them in their bedrooms. I mean, people are really responding, and normally it was my data. But in some cases, in this instance, it's all the chat metadata from a team of software developers. And I could see that art makes data sticky. It gets people to really look. The fact that it's reflecting something in them that's familiar, but there's something beautiful in their data, and they'll stop and really consider it. And I've been experimenting this even more. I wanted more people to get a chance to try it, so I've taken a lot of those rules and I've put it into an app that tracks where you've been and turns it into pattern. Sign up at .frickbits.com. I'm just starting the beta. It'll be a few months away, but it'll be free. You can try this yourself. And I've been working on this for years. And it was really, honestly, it was just a couple months ago, and I thought, why? Why am I doing this? I'm putting all these sensors on the outside of me. I'm using all the external measures, to try to figure, right? Okay, a shrink would look at me and go, Laurie, you're trying to figure out who you are. And I've changed jobs, I've moved cities, I've, pretty extreme things as a sense to try to understand myself. And I thought, maybe we all do this. We're always using external means to try to understand ourselves, to get a sense of who we are. You change jobs, you get a new boyfriend, you get a new apartment, you move to a new city, and you're trying to assess, do I like this one better? Does this one like me better? Do I get along better? Is this the right job for me? You're using those external ways to understand what affects you. And I thought, well, maybe that's the whole point. That all these self-tracking devices are a way to reveal this hidden part of us, the stuff we can't see. A lot of our personality is formed in childhood, or it's innate, it's embedded in our DNA. And it may be that self-tracking is really, it's a way to, to see and understand something about ourselves. And I thought, well, what if every bit of the data about us is available? There's a moment where, almost everyone today has commented about, oh, it's kind of vaguely unpleasant. What if, right? What if Connect watches my movements in my home? But what if it turns out to be wildly appealing? I'm starting to really think that this whole debate on privacy is going to turn the other way. It's going to go open source. It may have the opportunity for us to want our data, get access to our data, and be willing to share it, and it will change society and technology and possibility. I'm willing to see that it could completely go the other way. And if I get access to all that data, I have this chance to see, who am I? Who can I be? I could understand, today. Am I up? Am I down? Today. Am I on? Am I off? Do I have my mojo today? Jeremy, yes. I have become so interested and curious lately about data's ability to predict. There's a team looking at Twitter feeds to anticipate postpartum depression. There's another group looking at emails and looking at your circle of friends and your speed of email response to be able to understand reoccurrence of depression. So I'm really quite convinced, as much as the quantified self and self-tracking and sensors always get associated with fitness and health, I think it's about identity. I think it's about understanding who we are. The words we use, the things we search on, our biomarkers, our back posture, our glucose, particularly the unconscious things, the things that make us feel natural, mysterious. I say don't lead. I say don't hide. I think that's a moment we can embrace it. So I'm right at the end here, and if data is the way that we're going to understand ourselves, why should we run from it? So on one hand, I've kind of got this big existential idea that we are everything, right? It all adds up to everything that we can measure about ourselves. But maybe it's as simple as the data is going to tell me how I'm going to feel tomorrow. So rather than see surveillance as something that's sort of vaguely unpleasant, it could be wildly irresistible. Something you're going to absolutely positively want. So don't hide. Go get more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.